So I actually think the main thing I have got from this is a sense of collective, which is a bit weird because that isn't any of the sort of factual things that we've learned, which include data journalism, power mapping, freedom of information, which is all really, really useful and better training than I ever had when I was involved in journalism previously. But the really nice thing is kind of feeling like we're part of a group and we're all here to help each other, and it's not all competitive and I've got to get the story first like traditional journalism can be.
So I'm on a short course in investigative journalism, and what I've learned so far is that it's an amazing, empowering, easy and fun thing to do. We've had sessions on data journalism. Also we've had sessions on freedom of information requests, and what I've learned from that is they're very easy to do, and most of the reasons that people will give for not giving you the information are rubbish, and that can be easily appealed. Excuse me, I'm a little bit crisp stuck in my throat. And I've also learnt that the best way to get going, I think, on investigative journalism, citizen journalism, is just to get out and do it.
It's choosing something of interest and taking that forward in terms of a project, really. And my interest is certainly around mental health. It's around the whole idea of where mental health services should focus and how to get the most out of the resource that you provide. And personally, I think it's completely back to front. Now, so that's interesting. From the course, it's probably about writing, editing and developing the story, which I thought was brilliant actually from Emily. And that, you know, there was a kind of passion in Emily that certainly got to me. And I want to take this further. In fact, I was talking to my therapist this morning, who's actually Doctor of Psychology, and quite high up really, I suppose, in terms of the area. And I asked her about my passion in that sense, and I had a fantastic response. She said to me, I could answer the question, but why are you asking me to validate what is your passion? Clearly. And that was tremendous validation for me, I don't need to go and ask experts. I need to develop and start digging down. And in a sense, that's really what journalism is about, isn't it? It's not about going to some academic guru and saying, what's your take on this? It's about your personal passion for what you think is important. And I mean, in my case, for example, it is about, giving mental health therapy as early as possible. Within mental health, there's a kind of thing about clustering that we talk about. And, if it starts kind of low and then gets to really difficult cases. And the problem is, we never start early. People are too far into problems when they first access mental health. And that's why it needs to change.
Well, I think one of the things that's taken me by surprise is the importance of data to news reporting. Right. Because I've always been aware of sort of story and people and wanting to talk about people, but reading about asylum seekers and journalists interviewing refugees, one of the things that it mentioned is how important having data is, so that when you write about experiences, the reader begins to be able to see. And when you write about journeys, and when you write about the numbers, really, and you begin to actually see that perhaps what you've imagined is not how it actually is. And it's more than just having the figures, it's actually giving a shape to the figures. So, for instance, the fact that 80% of refugees aren't in first world countries, you know, most of them are in Turkey, that's a fact I didn't know. And it's finding ways to show it graphically, finding ways to make that data vivid and visual.
Well, I think this course is going to give me a lot of tools to improve my journalism, because I really want to report things that do not have the attention of the mainstream media. So I really want to tell the story of people that are like, they feel left behind. So I think this course is a great way to do it.
So currently I'm involved in a lot of activism. I at the moment just take pictures, but what I really want to do is to write down my experiences and so I can engage the local community and spur them on in being more involved with local activism. And so I'm part of this course, hoping to learn tools that I can use so that I can use those tools to spread the news about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and why they should get involved.
The session on freedom of information was very interesting because in my own sort of journalistic work I've tried to do FOIA requests before and they haven't been very successful, and I think what I realised from going to that session was that I was not phrasing the questions particularly well. I wasn't aware of the sort of legislation around FOIA as well, so that's what I got from that. Also, the stuff on data journalism has been interesting that we've done there, in the sense of the sort of various platforms and the media that you can use in order to research your stories. New media and new sort of methods of actually gathering information and fact checking and finding stories really.
We were very lucky to be invited to offer the course by the Centre for Investigative Journalism, and we were really proud because we're one of only 4 organisations like ours who are known as hyper-local news organisations in the country to be invited to do it. So that's how this all came about.
And what's your key learning and takeaway message? If you could formulate one key highlight of the course so far.
I think my key highlight of the course so far is the amount of energy, commitment and passion that local residents have to tell stories that really matter to them and to their communities.
And how do you think communities could change or develop as a consequence of this course?
I really hope that we can contribute to increasing understanding of each other as individual members of communities and diverse groups within communities, whether that's someone of a different race or religion or culture who lives down the road from you that you might be making assumptions about because you don't know their experience, or homeless people in the city centre that you might be making assumptions about. I also think more broadly, citizen journalism or community news can make a really vital contribution to local democracy. It helps people to engage with complexity, and I think politicians often sell misleading truths, otherwise known as lies, on the basis that people don't understand the complexity of an issue. And I think one of the key areas locally that is a great example of that would be cuts and changes to the NHS that are actually very complex when you look at them, which makes it very easy for ministers like Jeremy Hunt to just tell a series of lies.